what's up, guys? This is Carson, and welcome back to another podcast episode. I'm super excited to be bringing you guys a new podcast episode, and I am super excited to be bringing you more in the future. Remember, if you enjoy these, please hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have one of the masters of audio, both composing-wise. He's done sound design for games. Ross Tregenza, his work involves Texas Chainsaw, Deathloop, Crysis. The list goes on. But I'm really happy to have you on today. Again, thank you for coming on and working with me to find a time. But yeah, I would love to talk to you about Texas because that is definitely a more like experimental score compared to like what people normally like would associate with, I guess, the word score.
Yeah.
I guess. Was there any? I'm assuming there was referencing the originals and stuff, but was there any other references besides, watching and listening to the original film?
Um, yeah, it was a tricky one because like you say, like it was very experimental and like because the original film was incredibly experimental,
Mhm.
like Wayne Bell's score, like it's almost really in the like the gray area of what you would even consider a traditional score because it was mostly made up of like tape loops of things like metal shaking and squealing pigs and reverse flutes and all kinds of
Mhm.
crazy stuff. Um, so it's difficult because we knew we wanted to do that, and the brief was always like, just everything as authentic to the original film as
Mhm.
possible. Um, but the big problem at the beginning really was the difference between a film and a video game. Like the
Mhm.
film, you've got usually like 90 minutes or so, and you can sculpt that so that you've got like moments of crazy intense like squealing pigs and
Right.
deep heavy synths and stuff like that, and then you could like counterbalance with quiet for ages if you want to, so it doesn't get too grating and stuff.
Right.
But with a game, obviously, you don't know, you can't predict what's going to happen. It's a multiplayer game. You
Right.
don't know what's going to play out in each match. And B, people are playing it, sometimes 10 hours without stopping. So
Mhm.
it needed to be like really intense, like the film was, but we also needed some kind of like systems to make sure it wasn't just, like full on like onslaught onto your ears for
Mhm.
10 hours, because that'd be crazy. So
Yeah.
that was my first concern, I think. I remember thinking that for my first meeting with Gunn. It's like, I really want this to sound really extreme, really powerful, really experimental, but I also don't want to kill everyone's ears and just make it an unlistenable, like cacophony for hours and hours.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, in terms of like influences and stuff, I think it was actually more a case of I was going too broad at first. I was like, I think I was because I've got like a background in like industrial music from like
Mhm.
like Nine Inch Nails kind of things, stuff
Yeah.
like that, and I was thinking of like other maybe like more modern horror films like Hereditary and stuff like that I love the score for. So I was kind of
Mm.
bringing a lot of too much into it when the development of the game has always been about intense focus on that replicating that original film. So at first I was like sending tracks over to Wes Keltner, the CEO from Gunn, and he'd be
Mhm.
like, nah, it's too modern, it's too industrial. It's like,
Mhm.
it's a great track, it's just not right for this game. And so it just kind of cycled round and round and round until I really sort of distilled down to the basics and got it.
Mhm.
But also it did help that I'd done Deathloop
Yeah.
just before this because for that I was replicating like 60s and 70s sound to the music. So
Mhm.
so I'd already learned a lot about like emulating like reel-to-reel tape and 70s like echoes and delays and stuff like that. So I sort of threw all of that into the mix as well. So I'd
Mhm.
had this little sort of bedrock of like 70s sound design that I could draw on, which was
Right.
handy.
Did you ever was there ever like a thought in your mind while you were doing it to like you need to balance real recorded, sounds versus, sound design with synthesizers? Was there any like this is too synth heavy moments or any like I need to add more synth to this? Is there anything like that when doing something like this?
Yeah, yeah, very much so. Like it was really nice because you don't normally get the luxury of being like audio director and the composer on a project.
Right.
Like normally you're doing one or the other.
Hmm.
So it kind of meant that I instead of having to be like, okay, I've delivered this song based on this spec from the audio
Hmm.
team, that's the end of it. I got to just sort of really slowly iterate over 4 years. So like a lot of the music in the game, I would every now and then I would just add a new layer into it.
Hmm.
So like the Family House music, like that evolved over years. Like I took elements out, I put new
Hmm.
elements in, and because it's all sort of based on like layered stems that are moving around in real time. So
Right.
I'd be like, yeah, this one's a bit synthy. Let's get that synth out, and I'll get some like I'll run some like pig sounds through the modular and
Hmm.
get some kind of like tonal squealy stuff. And
Yeah.
so that was cool. So instead of just hard like deadlines for delivery, it was because I loved it so much. I would just maybe on a Sunday I had nothing to do. I'd just spend the day recording some extra content and be
Yeah.
like, oh, that'd be cool for gas station. Maybe I'll use this bit for a family house and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was a case of shifting the balance all the time. Like sometimes it would get too sound designy and kind of lose its way. So
Yeah.
I would maybe get like a Moog bass line, well, not a bass line, but like a bass
Yeah.
tone underneath and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
yeah, but it was cool that I had the opportunity to just change on the fly and just sort of keep cooking it over the
Hmm.
years, which was nice.
How many uh what all since I know you use because I've been checking out your channel um a lot more recently. Um Soma Lyra, the Soma Lyra 8. Besides that, which I'm definitely gonna probably honestly get one now
Oh yeah, get it. It's
because
great.
I don't think I had heard of it before, but I hadn't really like like looked into it. And then I saw that video and I watched it and I was like, I'm like the moment that that video ended, I have a little Behringer Crave semi modular,
Yeah.
um, which is it's all right. And
Yeah, it's good. That's a good like multi-unit. It's a
oh yeah,
solid thing.
and I sat here for like probably an hour running it through this guitar amp down here, just coming up with stuff. Um, that stuff is so much fun, honestly, man.
Yeah.
But I got sidetracked. Oh yeah, what all other synths did you use while making Texas?
So yeah, I think the Soma Lyra out of everything is the one that features on the most tracks, just
Hmm.
because over time I just realized it had this like this real like adrenaline tense tone to it that was just so useful and worked so well with the game for all those moments when you're just like really really heart racing and full of adrenaline.
Hmm.
It's kind of the sound of that. So that features almost every track. I think it's in there somewhere.
Hmm.
Second most common was the apprehension engine, which you may have seen some stuff
Ah.
about.
Hmm.
That's uh Wes from Gun. So he it's so I'll backtrack. So it's a
Hmm.
crazy instrument that was developed for a composer called Mark Corvin, who did the scores for The Lighthouse and The
Yeah,
Witch,
yeah, yeah.
and just a great composer. So he commissioned this instrument to be made. It's just like basically like a box with like a spring reverb unit and hurdy-gurdy built into it,
Mm.
and then like all kinds of like metal poles and stuff like that. And the whole thing is purely designed for making like horrific horror sounds,
Right.
basically. So and they're handmade by this one guy. So Wes commissioned having one built. And at the beginning of the project, just before lockdown in 2020, I got him to just spend like 4 or 5 evenings in a row. Just I gave him a shopping list of useful sounds I would like from it, and he basically just made me like a little collection of stuff that I could sort of scatter into the music and use as
Hmm.
the basis for stuff. So that gave it a really nice, unique voice as well because it's quite unusual sounding and it's got like a haunting kind of moaning quality to it.
Hmm.
So that featured a lot. I've got a few different Moog. I'm a big fan of Moog synths. I've got
Hmm.
a Moog subsequent that I just sitting next to me here that I use all the time, and the Moog Matriarch over there. So, uh, but the Moog is great because it's very clean and modern, but also they've been around forever, and
Oh yeah.
it sounds just as good in a modern song as it does like recreating the 70s sound. So
Oh yeah.
that was very prevalent. And then the my modular featured a lot.
Hmm.
not so much in like playing it, but more in like mangling sounds.
Hmm.
I would just sort of collect together source like the lobby music in the game while you're waiting in the lobby. That was I just took some recordings of pigs, just squealing pigs,
Mm.
and ran it into the modular through like this thing that replicates like reel-to-reel tape
Hmm.
and distortions, and then just I basically got it to a really good state, and then I just let it run for about like 30, 40 minutes, and then just
Mm.
cut out the best bits and form them into a track basically. So
That's super cool.
it was kind of like a co-composer on that one.
Oh yeah.
But and then various little bits and pieces, like an Aztec death whistle featured quite a lot.
Hmm.
The track when you're the last surviving victim in the game, it starts off with this really creepy howl, and that's an Aztec death whistle, which is this funny. I should have got it ready, but it's this cool little, it's just like a little skull-shaped
Hmm.
thing you just blow into, and it just sounds like this horrible like death scream comes out of it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I've I was wondering also because it's I guess the right term is it's like a live service ongoing
Yeah.
multiplayer. So is that something I don't know how much you're allowed to say, but is that something that you're still like there's still stuff you're writing for that um like both for the game or like trailer wise for example. I think recently there was a trailer that came out.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
saw that was pretty cool. Um
yeah, that was I did the audio for that one.
Yeah, it
I
looked good. It sounded good.
it's I hate to say it because it makes me sound like a dick, but
Hmm.
it's I just I can't say too much about the future stuff
Hmm.
because everything's sort of changing at the moment. And that you know they want to everyone involved wants to make sure the messaging is right and stuff.
Right.
So I have to plead the fifth on
No, no,
that
no, no.
one.
Don't worry. I get it.
I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. Um, there was also I wanted to talk to you also about Deathloop. Both
Yeah,
Deathloop, as in what you did for Deathloop, but also I was kind of curious as to how collaborating with another composer works on scores because whenever people normally think of collaboration they're like, oh, we're both
yeah.
working on the same track, which sometimes that's the case, sometimes not. What is it like working on game scores? Are you more or less they're working on something, you're working on something, and you're both trying to fit within this one cohesive sound, or is it like
Yeah.
sometimes you both are working on the same tracks?
Um, I think every composer would have a different answer to this based on their experience,
Hmm.
but and I would always be delighted to work with another composer on a track just because it's you sometimes get something that's better than the sum of the parts if two
Hmm.
people work together or however many people. Um, with Deathloop though, we had Michel Tremolio was the audio director. He has a great understanding of music, and he knew exactly what he wanted down to in a really good way, down to like really precise details. So he had like the audio in his head the whole time. So I didn't hear a single second of Tom Salter or
Hmm.
Eric Talaber's music until I played the game, which is
Mm.
crazy.
Yeah.
So it we all worked in isolation, not through any like a crazy plan to do that in particular. It's just
Hmm.
the way it worked out. And Michel had such a strong idea of what he wanted and
Hmm.
knew exactly how he wanted it to sound that he didn't really need to have us talk to each other about it. So that one was very much in isolation.
Hmm.
I mean, I've got other games I've worked on, like Homefront: The Revolution.
Yeah.
I worked on that with my very, very good friend Graham Norgate, who
Hmm.
I've done a lot of music
Yeah.
with over the years. And at that point, we were both working in-house well, originally at Crytek and then at Dambuster Studios. So that one was very much collaboration. We would talk about who's doing what. We would show each other the music all through every
Hmm.
day. So I think that game and like the bits of work I've done for Time Splitters and stuff like that, those are the ones that whenever I've
Hmm.
been working with Graham, basically, those are the times that I've collaborated.
Hmm.
But also even with Cyberpunk, it was the same situation. Marcin, the music director, again, he had like Michelle at for Deathloop. He had such a strong vision for how he wanted the audio to sound
Yeah.
and the music to work together that he had all these different people doing different things for him, and he would just pull them in and build that world
Hmm.
together. So I think when you get a really good audio director, I mean, it's always cool for people to talk to each other, but it's not a
Right.
necessity if they've got a if they can hear in their heads the
Hmm.
what it is that they're after.
Right. Yeah. And for Cyberpunk, that was you composed. I think it was a lot of it was ads and jingles, right? That's what it was.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
So
pretty much all of them.
how does how does working on something like that? I mean, obviously it's different, but like how does that vary from like actually scoring the game? What all do they send you? How do you work with them on that? Like how does that work for
Yeah,
that kind of work?
it was an interesting one. It was because so I did like 130 individual different like adverts for
Hmm.
that were on billboards in the world and on the
Yeah.
TV and stuff like that. And they wanted everyone to sound like it's from a different composer, which
Hmm.
made it brilliantly challenging and fun to do.
Oh yeah.
But it was a case of they would just send me like a lot of them were like animated, like little funny adverts and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So they would just send me like a folder with like 40 of them, and they'll be like, okay, here you go, here's another 40. And I would just watch it, think about it, like, okay, what instruments am I going to use?
Hmm.
And then kind of go for it. And
Yeah.
I would send them all back. Like with a lot of these sort of projects, the first ones I was kind of getting it a little wrong, and the voice that I wasn't quite there.
Hmm.
Uh, but then like, 6 months in, like we got into a good routine, and like they were just I was just sort of flying through with them.
Hmm.
But yeah, writing that kind of stuff, like diegetic stuff with like in-world content that's like emitting from the world
Hmm.
instead of the actual score. It's kind of a different process, and there's a lot of different things that I found over time that you need to watch for. Like you can't have the tracks too heavy because like too chunky in terms of the like full spectrum music,
Hmm.
because they're eating up space in the world when there's like
Mm.
dialogue going on
Yeah.
and ambient sound and the actual score sometimes on top of the
Hmm.
diegetic music. And you have to sort of keep them moving, like loads of like modulation dynamics and stuff like that, so that if they're like a load of them are playing at once, which is often the case in Cyberpunk,
Oh
you'd
yeah.
be like middle of the city, you'd hear them like coming from everywhere.
Hmm.
So they all need a lot of movement in it, so that they're not just this horrible cacophony of like notes stacked on top of each other.
Hmm.
So I realized that because for some reason I don't know why I didn't mean to do it, but I've done a lot of this diegetic like in-world music of adverts and things like that for various games.
Hmm.
So it's something I've learned over time that you got to keep the tracks moving and make sure they're not too chunky,
Hmm.
and you also kind of need to make the point very quickly, because
Right.
if it's placed in world, someone might be just walking by. So like the melodies are all like really short and very simple and catchy and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Like, if you're walking by some stuff in Cyberpunk, you'll notice that all the melodies are
Yeah.
so just like they get to the point really, really quickly, because
Hmm.
otherwise they're gone by the time you're halfway through like a complicated
Hmm.
melodic idea. So
Yeah. Do
fun
you
though.
ever I was wondering because this changes from what I can tell, just varying on who's who. Uh, but do you ever like sit down and play any of the games that you get to work on, or is that something where you just don't have the time to? Because that
Um,
changes a lot. I've noticed.
yeah, I mean, for the ones that I'm, because obviously like Texas Chainsaw, I was
Hmm.
audio director, and I was doing that for Sumo Nottingham.
Yeah.
So I've got a weird situation of that I'm like day job,
Hmm.
and then I'm allowed to freelance to a certain capacity
Hmm.
on writing music for other stuff. So the things I do in-house for Sumo, like I'll play them every day. Like
Hmm.
we have like play tests, and I'll play them on my own in the mornings and just make sure everything's sounding good and
Hmm.
working. But the games that come out that I've written music for, like it's always a huge joy to play them when they come
Hmm.
out. I mean, I'm playing a lot of Helldivers at the moment because I've got a little
Oh,
bit in Helldivers, which is
that's
really cool.
the amount of it's very good that like studios or I guess smaller studios that are getting this much success like this in Pow World. Helldivers is
Yeah,
really good.
yeah, they
Like
did such a great job with it.
oh yeah, and they're the cap is at like 800,000 players or something I
Yeah,
think
it's
right now.
amazing.
That's pretty
Yeah,
insane. And that's not even
yeah,
including Xbox. So I can only imagine what all the ODST Halo fans like myself would be doing if we had Helldivers. What was what else? Because I know Will Rogette did the like main title theme,
yeah.
but what was your role working in or on Helldivers?
So again, I did diegetic music, so adverts and stuff like
Hmm.
that again. So like if you're in the ship, there's like sort of like funny adverts
Yeah.
to do with like sort of bit of world building stuff.
Hmm.
So I did a lot of those. And then I've got a couple big tracks that I actually so far I don't know where they feature in the game. They're
Hmm.
really, really cool and I'm excited to hear them. But just like sort of big orchestral,
Hmm.
like hybrid orchestra with synths and stuff
Hmm.
and choir and things like that in. But it was a lot of fun recording that. We went down to famous Abbey Road in London, which
Oh
was
man.
that's so cool. I mean,
Hmm.
I've always just even just wanted to visit Abbey Road, let alone
Hmm.
have my music performed there. So
Yeah.
that was a crazy day. But but yeah, like I maybe not even 5% of Helldivers is mine. Like, I don't
Hmm.
want anyone to think I'm saying I'm the main composer on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just having a little bit in such a amazing game is
Hmm.
really cool. I'm super happy.
Oh yeah. Have you ever got anything else recorded at any other studios besides Abbey Road?
We did the orchestra for Helldivers in Nashville, which is
Hmm.
cool. I was just remoting in
Hmm.
to listen to it,
Was
but
it Ocean Way?
I can't remember. I'd have to check.
Hmm.
It's because actually, I mean, Helldivers it's been in production a while, so a
Yeah.
lot of this happened a while ago now. So I'd have to check the name.
Hmm.
But that was amazing. Just
Hmm.
because occasionally I'll be writing or like orchestral music isn't my main thing, but
Right.
I do occasionally write for like strings and brass and stuff
Hmm.
like that. But transferring that from like sitting here in my little studio in Nottingham with my cat sitting on my lap, just programming in like violins and stuff,
Hmm.
then transferring that to like, an actual string section, performing it live is
Hmm.
it's just mind blowing. It was
Hmm.
so exciting.
Whenever you do occasionally do that, do you sit there and do you transcribe it onto sheet music, or um, how does that process work? Because right now I mostly I use I'm asking this for myself. So I mostly
Mhm.
use FL Studio for like the composition, some
Yeah,
recording, and sound design. That's what I mostly use. And then whenever I get all that, I go over to Cubase, and that's where I do final mixing, final mastering, and stuff. Um,
yeah,
but since I write everything in FL Studio, it's I would say FL Studio is more friendly towards like sound design and electronics more than I guess writing orchestrally, at
yeah.
least from my experience. So I was wondering if do you transcribe that or do you get someone to do it, or how does that work?
No, I work exclusively in Cubase for everything,
Hmm.
for all sound design and all music. Not for any reason that I think it's
Hmm.
particularly any better than working in
Yeah.
Reaper or Apple Studio or Pro Tools, anything. It's just it's what I started on when I was.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to think about how many years. I think it's been about 25 years I've been using Cubase now.
Mm.
And it's just at the point that it would be crazy for me not to use it when
Yeah.
I've lived with it for so long. Um, but when it comes to taking that and getting that to an orchestra, uh, all I did was provide MIDI files, and
Hmm.
then they had orchestrators who would then just
Mm.
I would break it down to sections and make sure it's all named. And
Hmm.
I tried to sort of roughly conform to what I know is like the rules of orchestra for like
Hmm.
the sections and stuff like that.
Right.
But there's people whose full-time job is taking stuff from composers, and it's a huge skill in and of
Hmm.
itself to be able to transfer that to an orchestra because there's I'm I have a very sort of fundamental knowledge of
Hmm.
orchestra writing. I can't read music even.
Hmm.
I've come from like bands background as opposed to classically trained.
Hmm.
Um, so they have to kind of take the chaos that that I've written
Yeah.
and sort of conform that to what actually works for an orchestra.
Hmm.
Like some of my string parts were too high, some were too fast, things like that. So
Hmm.
it's a fascinating process, and yeah,
Oh
they
yeah.
would check in with me and say like, this is so high, it's very uncomfortable for them to play. You won't
Hmm.
get such a good performance. Can we take this down an octave? And I'm just, yeah, of course, yeah.
Hmm.
So fascinating thing to have that sort of like from my and like spaghetti and original music,
Hmm.
just straightening that out and making it into something that an orchestra can actually play.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I after the point of like providing them like MIDI of everything I've
Hmm.
written, it's people that know a lot more about that world than me
Hmm.
that make sense of it all.
Yeah. Um, Also, you mentioned a little bit ago, Graham Norgate, I
Yeah.
guess. What was it like working with him? Because I mean, he's done Killer Instinct. He worked on
Yeah.
Time Splitters. Um, Very accomplished. He did Goldeneye as well, which Goldeneye is
Yeah.
also incredible. Um, what is it like? What was it like working with him?
Oh, it's awesome. It all came about from years and years ago because we like the same kind of music, like sort of electro and industrial music and
Hmm.
stuff. And he was at like a festival of that kind of music that I was playing at, and somebody
Hmm.
was like, "Hey, this guy wanted to just come say hi 'cause he loves your band." And
Hmm.
so I was just being nice and making chit chat with him and asking what he did. And he said he's a game composer that did GoldenEye and Time
Mm.
Splitters and stuff. And I just went crazy. Like I was way more of a fan of his than he was of me.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of what's now been a friendship and like a professional. We worked together on loads of stuff
Hmm.
for many years now, like 15,
Hmm.
15 to yeah, about 20 years, I guess. We've
Yeah.
been doing stuff. So the first thing I did for him was just one track for Time Splitters 2,
Hmm.
which he was happy with. So Time Splitters 3, I did like 6 tracks, I think it was for him.
Hmm.
And then eventually I ended up like working as part of his audio team for the original Free Radical studio in Nottingham.
Yeah.
We worked on Haze and a ill-fated Star Wars game,
Hmm.
and then that eventually became Crytek UK. So that was like it's like a long, slow evolution. But we've done a lot of music together over the years. So he's
Hmm.
a lovely guy and he's a good friend.
What's because I also saw on your website that you have worked on something Star Wars related. What was the Star Wars thing? Because I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out what it was.
It was Battlefront 3, 2, 3, 3. I think
Did
3.
is it did it come out?
No.
Okay, then yeah, three. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was unfortunate.
Hmm.
I mean, at that point, I was really sort of, it was my first job in the industry and I'd
Yeah.
only been there a year. So I have like no information about how that went wrong and what went
Yeah.
wrong and stuff. But really, I was heartbroken when it didn't come out
Hmm.
because I'd worked very hard on it for like a year and a
Hmm.
half at that point. And it was cool. It was a cool game, but
Yeah.
you never know. Game dev is a crazy world. You can think
Oh
everything's
yeah.
fine, and then it can all go horribly wrong very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's an unfortunate part of the industry.
Especially recently, I've noticed
Oh man,
it's
it's a
been
bad
pretty
time.
sad.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a horrible time for the industry.
do you have any or idea or guess as to why things are like that right now?
Well, I mean, a factor. I mean, there's always a myriad of factors with this
Yeah.
kind of thing, but a, definitely a factor was like lockdown and COVID
Oh yeah.
because everybody was at home. And while obviously many industries suffered, the video games industry had this
Hmm.
crazy boom because people weren't going out to bars or like clubs and things like that. They were just staying home playing video games.
Yeah.
So like the kind of numbers we used to see on like a just like one day of the week, we'd be getting like top numbers every day of the week on all games. Like
Hmm.
the amount people were playing was just crazy. But games industry companies have a terrible habit of if things are going well, they just like hire a load more people,
Mm.
expand way too quickly. It's a real common problem. And then
Hmm.
obviously when life went back to normal, people are going back to work and going out to clubs and hiking and doing the things people do,
Yeah.
and they're not playing video games as much. So now suddenly those numbers drop dramatically
Mm.
again, and all these studios are overstaffed, and yeah, projects are getting cancelled and staff are getting laid off. But yeah, really, it's been a rough year for the
Hmm.
games industry. So many great studios shutting down, talented people losing their jobs. It's
Hmm.
been a heartbreaking year.
Yeah. Um, Going away from that because it is very sad and it's a lot to it's a lot to
Sorry.
unpack. He goes, sorry.
Yeah, my
This
yeah,
is
my
funny.
watch is sorry about it. So that's good.
That's funny. Um, but you also got to work on Youngblood, Wolfenstein. Um,
Yeah.
Tom Salta also worked on that as well. Did you for that? Did you get to talk to him at all as well for that, or was that also where you guys were mostly getting to work on it somewhat separately?
Yeah, that was the one where like I mean I spoke to Tom, like we chatted after, and
Hmm.
we were super excited about the because it won some awards and stuff. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of lovely like camaraderie after and things like that. But during it, yeah, like I said, didn't really have any involvement with him on it. It was
Hmm.
again, it was another great audio director. It was Nick Rayner in that case,
Hmm.
who did the Wolfenstein games, and then because he eventually left and went to Arrowhead, which is how I
Yeah.
got the gig working on Helldivers, because
Mm.
this was all
Yeah.
like 5 years ago now. But yeah, he was another great audio director. He knew exactly what he wanted, so it was a case of he just gave me the briefs for all the songs that I did,
Hmm.
and we just toed and froed on them. Like, I really love when I'm working as a freelancer. I love audio
Hmm.
directors that know what they want and aren't afraid to make me do 25, 30 versions of a track before they're happy
Yeah.
with it because I want it to be great. And I think it's probably true of pretty much everyone that I think if left to my own devices, I probably write the songs to like 75% of my own potential. But when
Hmm.
someone's pushing you, that's when you do your best work, I
Yeah.
think. So even though there are times I was in all of these games, everything I've done when I'm doing it for someone else, quite often I'm exhausted and
Hmm.
I'm on the 25th version of a song. I've done it for 150 hours and like I send it to them. I think, "Oh, surely this is the one," and they're like, "No, I don't think it's right." But that's how you do your best work, I think, is just making someone else push you beyond the point where you'd normally stop yourself. So
Yeah.
so he was great for that. He was really cool.
I've recently this is I guess I don't know how many other people do it, but recently I won't say like who or what it is or anything, but I've been working on a project and he keeps making me do new versions to the point where right now I'm like at like I think it's like over 50. And
Oh, that's a lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so again, I won't say what it is or anything because
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
no,
allowed
don't
to
do
and all that. But like finally I was just like, "You know what? I'm just going to send him the exact same thing I sent him before and see what he thinks." And I did and he was like, "Yeah, this is it."
it. Oh, that's amazing.
It's pretty funny how that works sometimes, but
Yeah. It's a difficulty of that's why I like these like audio directors that
yeah.
they know what they want, but they also know how to articulate what they want,
Yeah.
which is the important difference because there's a big difference between like Michelle from Deathloop
Hmm.
saying, "No, I want the drums to be more traditional psychedelic rock drums," and
Yeah.
sending me like a pattern that he would like to hear in it and things
Hmm.
like that. That's so much more useful to me than a
Hmm.
director saying, "No, I don't like it. Do a new one.
Do a new version.
Do different music."
Would you say the best audio directors are ones with background knowledge in audio and or music?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I've been very lucky generally with the directors I've worked with, my
Mhm.
freelance work. They've all been a nice balance of understanding music and knowing what they want,
Right.
but not to the point where they're just kind of like imposing their own
Hmm.
like frustrated musician aspect into the music or anything like that. They've all been good guys that when the track is right, immediately they're like, "That's the one. We're
Hmm.
done. Moving on." So it certainly helps. Like
Hmm.
it's just because otherwise it's like you're missing this common language and it
Right.
can be frustrating for everyone involved
Hmm.
like because they're if it's a someone that you're working for and they just don't know the language of what they want, they're saying like they might be even saying the wrong thing and they might be saying like, "No, get it bassier," and I'm just like,
Mm.
it turns out they don't mean
Get it.
bassy, they just mean like punchier and things like that.
Yeah,
So
that's
you can
funny.
push in the wrong direction with like slightly dodgy feedbacks.
Hmm. For cycling back to Deathloop as well, because I really enjoyed the Deathloop stuff, both what you've done, what Tom did, um, what everyone did on that game. Um, you mentioned psychedelic rock. Is that something that they frequently had you reference for that, or what all kind of references did they have for you to work on for that?
It was a really nice mixture of things. The core was psychedelic rock. Like
Hmm.
they definitely wanted that to be very central to it. So like late 60s, early
Mm.
70s. but they also wanted to throw in like a few kind of like wild cards of like experimental and industrial stuff. They
Yeah.
said it's cool to try that. It's like one of the tracks I wrote for it called Carnival
Yeah.
was was really like more of like a almost like a 80s experimental industrial dance track.
Hmm.
But because the in the fiction of it, it's sort of like timeless, and it's like the influences visually are also like all the way from the 60s to the 80s,
Hmm.
like sort of jammed together in interesting ways. So yeah, it was like a psych rock and then a bit of like actual more early 60s stuff with
Hmm.
like the organs and stuff that feature quite a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Feels like sort of early 60s pop rock. And then yeah, right through to like experimental early 80s. So
Hmm.
it was cool. It was a great brief.
Hmm.
Like it was a real pleasure writing that music. I like psychedelic rock and 70s music and
Hmm.
stuff, but I didn't really know how to play it that much. So there was a lot
Yeah.
of like learning I'm a very mediocre guitarist. It's not
Mm.
I love to play guitar, but it's not
Yeah.
like my professional instrument of choice. So
Hmm.
I had to sort of buff my skills a little bit
Yeah.
and for some of the guitar parts I was playing and a lot of fixing it afterwards in Cubase.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The amount of hours editing guitar takes can be kind of crazy sometimes. Um.
Yeah, I was a little shocked by my lack of rhythm in some of the guitar playing.
Oh
I'd look
yeah.
at it afterwards, go, "Are you kidding me?" This is
Yeah. It's always for the most part fine when you're doing it, and then you listen to it. It's like, what is this?
yeah.
This is terrible. Yeah. Arcane Studios. What was the overall, because um, Arcane has made so many good games. They started
Yeah.
um, like really, I think, gaining popularity with like Dishonored and stuff.
Mm,
Um, and those are incredible games. Those are great.
yeah.
Um, and they have a really solid legacy for games. What was that like, getting approached to work with them for Deathloop?
Um, it was a funny one because just through luck really the my work for Deathloop, my work for Cyberpunk happened at exactly the same time.
Mm.
Excuse me. So I got kind of both those gigs at the same time. So at first it was kind of difficult with that split focus because I
Hmm.
got these two very different games and very different studios. Um, but as I got to know both teams, I just realized, there was a lot to love about both of those.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I say, Arcane Leon have got such an amazing history. It's a studio very full of talent.
Oh
Like
yeah.
their creative director Dingus is a great guy that knows exactly what he wants. And like I'd said, like Michelle had just such a strong idea of what the sound for the game was going to be, even in the first stages when it was, just a few bits of concept art and some block out levels and things like that.
Hmm.
So it was it was just so lovely when it was released that it was met with such enthusiasm.
Hmm.
And conversely, it was pretty rough. I felt really bad for the Cyberpunk guys when the release for that was met with
Yeah.
wild anger.
No.
Like
Yeah.
it's it feels so good because the head of audio code for Cyberpunk is a very good friend of mine, has been
Hmm.
for like way before I was doing that work. So seeing, all the crazy outrage of people
Hmm.
about the bugs and stuff at first was heartbreaking when I knew how much work they put into that game.
Yeah.
You know, they they're all putting, hundreds of hours and stuff, you're just
Hmm.
getting that stuff done. So like this last year, but like with the Phantom Liberty and
Hmm.
the like deluxe edition and stuff like that, it just feels like the slate has finally been like, wiped
Yeah.
clean and people finally love Cyberpunk the way they should have done it day one
Yeah.
if unfortunately didn't have all those issues and stuff. So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
No.
both those studios amazing to work for.
Hmm. I'm a fan of, like that kind of, futuristic stuff. Like, I'm a massive
Mm,
Star Wars fan, for example,
yeah.
like Blade Runner, all that stuff. And so whenever I originally saw the stuff for Cyberpunk before it was out, I was incredibly excited. And then because of the way it launched, people were like, just don't play it. I was like, okay, I guess I won't.
Yeah.
Because at the time I was like, I'll just listen to what everyone else is saying, because I didn't have a brain back then, essentially. But I would say, I think um, Edge Runners is what started turning it back around. Even though
Mm,
that's not the actual game itself, it's, I think that really helped.
yeah.
And so because I watched that show, which was incredible, um, I got into Cyberpunk, um, and then that's whenever I started listening to the music. I found out that you did advertisements for it, and so there was literally a moment, or like I guess 30 minutes in my playthrough where like I was like, he really just sat here and like made like hundreds of these ads like sitting in the middle of Compeki Plaza, I think it was.
Yeah.
Um, it's just crazy. And then Phantom Liberty came out, and you know, I have easily like I think I have like 10 days in that game. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
pretty
It's
great.
it's such a great game.
Yeah. Do you is that a game that you have played through?
Yeah, I played through quite a big portion. My girlfriend is literally playing it over there right now.
Nice, nice.
But so I kind of handed over to her, and uh, I often find like because I like to listen to the games, and I get so I'm terrible at every game. So when I'm playing, I can't focus on the
Mhm.
audio because I'm so stressed at how bad I'm doing with the game.
Mm,
Uh, sometimes I prefer like my girlfriend playing it, and I'll just watch, and then I can
yeah.
listen without messing
Mhm.
up the game. I even
Um,
had Colin Waldo, the who I mentioned, the
mhm,
head of audio code of CD Projekt Red.
mhm.
He was visiting, and he just came and fixed my my loadout and stuff. He was like, "Hey, this is a mess. Let me sort this out for you."
Yeah. Yeah, it's an incredible game. I mean, like that's one of those like three games that's like a single player game that I've put like, like like days into. Um
Yeah,
are there
it's such a
any
rich world. It's really cool.
oh yeah, like oh man, I think that it was such a smart idea of them to have the kind of I guess more trashy side of
Mm,
I guess a futuristic world, kind of like some of Blade Runner, for example. I think it's so
yeah,
smart to have that, then the really nice stuff, and then like the Outlands and everything. And then whenever that
yeah,
2.0 update dropped and they added vehicles with like armory and weapons, I'm like,
mm.
dude, this is just Mad Max now, but it's
Yeah,
futuristic cyberpunk stuff.
yeah.
It's
It's
so good.
fantastic.
Are there um are there any other games that you play like multiplayer wise, single player wise that you don't work on?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad fact that I spend so much time composing and sound designing for games now that I don't play as many
Hmm.
games as I did by, I play
Yeah.
a tenth of the games that I played 15 years ago.
Hmm.
But there are ones I make time for, like Last of Us. I'm a
Mm.
huge fan of, in terms of every aspect of it, really. Just the writing, directing,
Hmm.
acting, the sound design, and the music are just every part of it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um, and then because with Texas Chainsaw, I tried to at least sort of dabble in anything that feels vaguely similar
Mm.
in terms of like horror and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I played a little bit of the Resident Evil games.
Hmm.
Mortal Kombat is it's I've always loved Mortal Kombat.
Hmm.
So anytime a new version of Mortal Kombat drops, I'll play that for a while just
Hmm.
because it's a pleasure. Um, but yeah, I think uh, as I've got older, like I've tended to sort of edge towards games that are more of like a sort of a cinematic experience,
Yeah.
or like an immersive
Hmm.
experience, like Cyberpunk and Last of Us, GTA, and stuff like that. Things that I can just enjoy the world. I love any
Hmm.
game that does really sort of intense world building where you can
Hmm.
just anywhere you go, there's stuff to see and
Hmm.
feel like you're part of something. So it's those kind of games I gravitate
Hmm.
towards. It was I have to say it was great with Gun, Texas's publisher, that from day one that they wanted to point out the emphasis was on the immersive cinematic
Yeah.
experience, not like intense competitive gaming. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's there's always that element to it, and for some people playing it, it's all about that. It's all about the
Yeah.
builds that they've made and that kind of stuff. But they wanted to make sure that the key experience was like living
Hmm.
the film, and that that's so I think even if I hadn't been a part of the Texas Chainsaw
Hmm.
Massacre game, I would really be loving the experience of
Hmm.
creeping around those tunnels and
Yeah.
hiding behind things while Leatherface is revving his chainsaw and stuff
Hmm.
like that. Like that's the kind of stuff I love in games. So it was cool to be
Hmm.
a part of it.
Yeah. Whenever whenever I've been playing it, there's definitely moments that like I think it's the family house map, like standing
Mm.
outside and it's like sunset and everything, and with you know, there's all the audio. The UI looks really nice. It definitely, I think it definitely does that well. Um, so uh did you? I'm going back to Texas Chainsaw because it's too good. Um, I heard that you did end up getting to record, like you recorded chainsaws and everything and put that in. What was it
Yeah.
like implementing that? Was that like something where you did more reel to reel stuff? Was that, you know, uh through modular synthesis you ran that through some stuff, or how did you process the chainsaw stuff?
The chainsaw was so difficult.
Yeah, I can
It
imagine.
was it was the day I got it right was a great day because
Hmm.
I don't even want to think about the hundreds and hundreds of hours I've listened
Yeah.
to chainsaw sounds for the last few years. Um, but we had great starting point because the guys at Gun got Watson Wu, who's like one of the best like field recording experts in
Yeah.
in the industry. They took him out to I guess they were in Kentucky, and
Hmm.
they worked with like engineers that knew the Poland chainsaw, like the one from the film. I've got one over there. You can't see it because it's dark. There it is up there.
Oh, there it is. That's
Yeah.
cool.
I managed to find one, so I got one. But yeah, they worked with old engineers that knew how to get it going right and everything. And they spent like 3 days recording source content for me.
Hmm.
Um, but it was just incredibly difficult. It's I think I've said this before somewhere, but I kind of visualized it in the end like a triangle where it had to be in the middle of these three elements of
Hmm.
how an actual Poland 245 or 306 chainsaw sounds in real life is up
Right.
here. It's one part. And then you've got how it sounded in the film, which was it was recorded in the 70s with a sort of guerrilla recording techniques and
Hmm.
stuff. So it's kind of um it sounds very particular in the film that's very different from reality. And then you've got
Right.
video games, like it needs to sound badass, just the rule of
Hmm.
cool. Video game stuff needs to sound great. So it needed to be this point in the middle of those three extremes,
Hmm.
which is so difficult.
Yeah.
I started from the ground up. I think it's 9 times over for the
Mm.
original saw, and I think it's 15 times over for the Nicotero saw that was released as an additional
Yeah.
saw later on. Um, but it was just so difficult. I because I decided I didn't want to just have like you press the button and it
Mhm.
does like a designed
Yeah, yeah.
just because there's no fun in that because you don't feel like you're genuinely controlling it. But what went wrong for the first year, and it was years
Oh
of working
man.
on it, was that I was basically trying to like ahead of my head, I wanted to treat it like a car engine,
Hmm.
like working on like Forza or something like that, where
Yeah.
you have like you use the RPM and acceleration curves and a really realistic drive of what it's like to control the chainsaw. And I got that sounding really good, but if I was making a game called like Chainsaw Simulator,
Hmm.
it would have been perfect. But
Right.
it wasn't fun and it wasn't scary and it wasn't sexy. It was just like,
Yeah.
it was
Hmm.
just like nice controlled rev all the way up to the top and gently down again.
Mm.
And so eventually I realized that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to like get Leatherface going crazy with the
Right.
chainsaw. So in the end, I kind of what happens is it's kind of a simulation for the first third of it, and then it's kind of like he loses control as you get to
Hmm.
the second and third of the curve.
Hmm.
The sound design changes to go like slightly wild and out of control, and you
Hmm.
get really strong haptic response. So it's kind of like he gets excited as he revs
Hmm.
it, and beyond a certain point, like he is in the film, because in the film he's just feathering
Yeah.
it like.
Yeah.
So I kind of do like forced feathering, like forced like psychotic feathering of a
Hmm.
chainsaw beyond that point, and that's what worked in the end.
Hmm.
Like the sense of just like wild, because you do that yeah, wild, crazy, psychotic
Yeah.
chainsawing. So yeah, the simulation just was it was a good idea, but it wasn't right in the end. It needed to be a hybrid of like designed and simulated.
Right.
And yeah, after many hours, that's where I ended up.
Oh man. Do you find that would that I'm curious about this. Would experimental music like that, and especially stuff that can occasionally be really low stuff, do you find that that's harder to work with like sound effects and everything because I mean, obviously, you don't want to you want to make sure that they're not like clashing or anything. So, was there any, um, like for example, Mick Gordon and Doom 2016 or Eternal? I don't remember.
Yeah.
It might have been both, but from what I heard, he ended up making sure that whatever song was playing, the sound effects were like in the same key, I think, or something like that, and
Mm.
so that way they'd work really well together. So I was wondering if there was anything like that for this kind of stuff.
Um, in terms of key and stuff, it wasn't a problem because a lot of the times for the Texas Chainsaw stuff, when things are clashing, it's at its best. It's like when sounds are like rubbing against each other, that's
Hmm.
where you got some really interesting, like extra,
Yeah.
like textural stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I almost designed a lot of it to be very sort of like feathered and grainy, so that all the sounds in the game, both the sound design and music, rub against each other
Hmm.
and are quite abrasive and mix weirdly.
Hmm.
Um, the only problem I did face was like the frequency range because you've got like the chainsaw and a lot of the music because it's very doomy music.
Right.
Obviously, it's very sort of there's a lot going on at about like 400 to 1K in terms of the mix and stuff like that. Like if
Right.
you looked at it at any point, there's like this sort of little area where things were getting too busy. So
Hmm.
I had to learn to think about that when doing the sound design and the music and everything. Just think like, okay, don't rely on this little doom area of
Hmm.
frequency at around like 400 hertz where a lot of stuff happens.
Hmm.
So I would push the music. I would scoop that quite often and then like push more into like lower frequencies, like 200 hertz and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and make sure that I've got a lot of like higher frequency content like sort of scraped metal sounds and things like that that are like beyond like 2K and stuff like that
Yeah.
where they're like shimmery and detailed and stuff like that because the mix of the game like 2 years before release was just really muddy and
Hmm.
like just way too much focus on that like middle area. So yeah, it was a lot of like for a while it's like retrofitting things and like going back and scooping out bass and stuff like that so that everything wasn't competing with each other. But then after a while I just learned the language, and so
Right.
new music that I wrote would be shimmery up there, lots of texture, scoop out the middle, stuff like that. Because it's my day to day for 4 years. I just got
Yeah.
used to what was needed.
Hmm. So does that mean that like the game mix and the soundtrack mix were those are those different because of, you know, the game mix you're accounting a little bit more for sound effects? Did that change how um the official release of the soundtrack is compared to in-game, or are they the same?
Oh, at the because it was kind of a difficult thing to do with the soundtrack because there's no real there are some tracks in the game. There's the like the
Yeah.
main menu music called the Massacre, and then if you're in trouble for a long time in the middle of the game, it triggers like this designed track called Blunt-Headed Hammer. That's like a
Hmm.
heavy, really heavy song. But the rest of like the in-game music is just layers and layers of texture. There's no tempo, and they're
Hmm.
designed to like play. They're all like different lengths and things like that. So it ended up being a case of for the soundtrack, I just took sort of like five or six texture layers, each of those being made of like 10 layers or so or whatever
Hmm.
uh, uh, for each of them. And I would just take like five or six of those and then just like design a track out of texture layers that feature in the game.
Hmm.
So because the game is so dynamic and like all over the place in terms of what you hear.
Hmm.
Couldn't really genuinely replicate that. So a lot of that is just taking ingredients and just making something new out of it for the soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's all stuff that features in the game, but yeah, it's just built to kind
Hmm.
of tell the story of each of the environments, basically.
I will say I as much as I mean I love the like sound design stuff. I really like some of the contrast you had in that. Um like especially I think it was I think it was the like the main title theme and like I think Who Will Survive, I believe is the name of it.
Yeah.
Um like the difference between those and like for example the credits theme, um
Mm.
like it was really nice. Like again, it's great listening to soundtracks with really cool sound design and stuff, and I love sitting down and doing that. But it was really nice having that in there because I'm just sitting there, you know, listening to it. because I'll just have it on sometimes. Like right now, I'm actually referencing the soundtrack right now for a game I'm doing. Um, so I'll just be sitting here sometimes listening to it, but I'll have it on shuffle, and so it's so nice having that moment with like the piano and everything. I actually wanted to ask you about the piano. Like, what
Hmm.
did you do for that? Because it sounds really nice.
Yeah, I was really happy that the gun were okay with it because it was a little bit of a departure from the other tracks
Yeah.
in the game. I'm a big fan of anytime I've done like credits music for games, I feel like
Mhm.
it's a chance to like I don't know why, but it's feels like yeah, the game's over, like it's a time to do something a bit different.
Yeah.
And that one was inspired by it was a conversation I'd had with them like halfway through development where I had a little musical sting when the victims like escaped the house, and it
Hmm.
was kind of not like cheesy, but it was kind of like jubilant. It was like major chords and like
Hmm.
no no no,
Yeah.
like something nice had happened, and they're like no no, we're not having anything nice in this game. It's like even though they've escaped, like
Yeah.
their life is ruined forever by what they've seen.
Mm.
So all we can have is like dissipation of adrenaline and then sort of like tension of like what's now for them, which is the tagline of the film, obviously. It's like and what will be left of them.
Yeah.
So which is it's what I tried to do with that track is like it was kind of like the end. It's like okay, it's over, but you know you're kind of so scarred and so
Hmm.
like ruined by the events of it that it's not like a jubilant track at all. It's kind
Right.
of like melancholy and
Hmm.
like this lingering tension. um so yeah, I think it was a range of pianos layered on top of each other. I think one of the layers of piano was this great piano instrument I have called Pripyat Piano, which is
Mm.
it's a Ukrainian company, and they recorded pianos like in Chernobyl, like in various like reactor
Ah.
rooms and stuff like that. And they're like really, really old, destroyed pianos. So they're
Yeah.
like slightly discordant and slightly weird, and they got like a real edgy quality to
Hmm.
them. But yeah, it was cool. I was because it's so unlike everything else in the soundtrack. I was quite nervous about like showing it to them, but yeah, they
Yeah.
just they took it on board. They're happy with it, so that's cool.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that idea of end credit songs being something. I mean, similar, but different enough.
Yeah.
Like a good example of something that I can think of that you did. I mean, obviously there's time splitters and everything, but also Crysis. Um,
Mm.
that was also really cool and that was really nice. Um,
Oh
in
yeah, I did like a dubstep
Yeah,
version
you
of the
did.
theme.
Yeah, like like you can go from listening to the actual soundtrack and everything, and then you you just go to the end credits. You're like, these hi hats, like it's nice. It's so different. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't believe they let me do that. Like,
yeah,
it was a weird choice, but I think it worked quite nicely. I'm still
yeah,
happy with it.
and a
It's
lot
a
of
little of
people
its
like it.
time maybe, but I'm still happy with it.
No, yeah, and a lot of people enjoy it. So I wanted to ask you because you've been working in games for a while, and I was
Mm.
curious how um, audio for games, both implementing sound design, composing for games, how they varied
Mm.
from like this generation of Xboxes and PlayStations to like 360 and stuff. I was wondering how
Yeah.
different um, working on those two different kind of consoles are, if there is any difference.
I think the nicest thing is that it used to be a balancing act all the time of memory and like even working on the Crisis games, it was a case of okay, this the amount of memory we've got left.
Mm,
If we want to have this like sound of wind in, like what are we going to unload so that we can fit that into the memory?
mm,
There was a lot of like juggling of elements all the time. Like if people weren't using a gun sound, we had to unload that gun and load in another gun. And if we were in a cutscene, we had to unload some game sounds while the cutscene was playing and then
mm,
swap them back in. And so like maybe like 20% of our time was just management of assets for the
mhm.
sake of the fact that we couldn't keep everything in memory and then fixing bugs when memory ran out because
Yeah.
we'd forgot to unload, a music track or something like that.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's not fun. It's not interesting.
Yeah.
It's
It
it
sounds
was just
tedious.
yeah, and it just generated so many bugs and so many headaches and stuff that now with like the current gen, yeah, we have to. we kind of like we just design and we just make whatever we want. And sometimes, like Texas Chainsaw, um, I just threw in everything I wanted, like hundreds of spot sounds and things
Yeah.
like that. And then at some point, our audio programmer Eugene Cherney would be like, "Okay, man, we got too many voices playing now. We need to bring this back a bit." So we'd have to do a little bit of maintenance work just to say like, "Okay, maybe when we're inside, we turn off some of the outside sounds."
Yeah.
But it's a light touch these days, whereas 15 years ago, like it was just a day-to-day grind trying to get everything to play at the same time.
Hmm.
So like it is with everything, like with writing music with more powerful computers and stuff, you don't have to spend all your time making these sucky choices of what
Yeah.
thing you can do with the amount of memory you got left. You can actually
Hmm.
just go crazy and then clean it up a little bit later. So it's a better time overall in terms of
Yeah.
like creative work. Like it was so lovely for Texas just throwing in zillion billion little
Hmm.
weird spot sounds. A lot of them people will never even notice or think about, but
Hmm.
just for like for my own pride and for the detailing.
Yeah.
There's stuff absolutely everywhere on those maps, hundreds of sounds.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. I never thought about that. Yeah, that would actually make sense for the storage stuff to happen for those. Um,
Yeah.
did you so that means whenever you probably worked on music, did you have to export it, you know, like did you have to change like render settings for music and stuff compared to
Yeah,
what now is?
like so back in previous gen and stuff, it was sort of a heartbreaking thing of like we would start with a certain amount of like quality of the assets and number of the assets and stuff. And then as time went on, we were like, no, it's still not fitting into memory. We're still getting stutters and things like that. So
Hmm.
we'd reduce the quality another 10%, and
Mm.
like you start to hear a tiny bit of artifacts. Like if you play like a PS3 game or something now, you'll hear there's like a graininess to some of the
Yeah.
sounds. That's just especially bigger games, like big open world games on like the PS3. You can hear that they've had to make really unfortunate compromises, and you get this
Hmm.
like artifacty element to the sounds that's
Yeah.
really so it's yeah, so cool we don't have to do that anymore.
Hmm.
Like it's real relief.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I'm sure you have stuff to
That's
do.
okay.
But I wanted to ask you one last thing. For because sometimes there are people who listen to these who want to get into composing and stuff
Mm.
and have not the slightest idea how to, or they have an idea how to, but they need advice. For example, what would you say to someone that wants to get into composing for games or sound design for games?
Yeah, for both of them, there's no reason not to dive in immediately. It's we're in a really great situation where the software that you need to be able to do it
Hmm.
is if you like you can try Reaper out for free for a long
Hmm.
time. There's entry versions of things like Cubase and stuff like that you can
Hmm.
get for very reasonable small amounts of money. And then in terms of for sound design, that there's like the GDC vaults. They have no GDC sound design collections.
Yeah.
They have like huge amounts of free samples that you can use that are same quality as what we use in the games industry.
Hmm.
And for composing, there's like the Spitfire Labs, which is amazing quality musical
Yeah.
instruments.
It's pretty helpful.
Yeah, Native Instruments Start, I think they call it, which is their collection of like free content. So what I'm saying basically is there's no barrier to beginning anymore. Like
Hmm.
all that stuff is the same quality as stuff I use and that anyone in the industry uses. So
Hmm.
just I'd say just try it. There's millions of tutorials online from
Hmm.
people in terms of like the software that you need to learn if you're doing
Hmm.
sound design or for like composing for games. So yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
It's all there. And also uh I say it all the time, but like speaking to games composers and stuff on social media like Twitter and slash X and things like that, um, they're nice guys.
Yeah.
These are all just people writing music and doing sound design for games. We're all just some nice nerds doing a
Hmm.
creative job. And
Essentially.
yeah, I'm always happy to chat to anyone if they got questions,
Hmm.
and it'll be the same for loads and loads of other composers and sound designers.
Hmm.
So I say just get out there, ask questions to people that have been doing it for longer, get the tools, and just start giving it a go.
Hmm. Yeah. It definitely is a lot easier. Like we don't need to pay for studio time necessarily to
Exactly.
be
Yeah.
able to get into stuff like that.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and coming on here,
no
letting me
problem.
annoy you with some questions.
No, it's been cool.
I'm a massive fan of your work, so um,
Thank you.
I'm excited for whatever you're working on now. Um, that'll come out in the future. So thank
Yeah,
you again.
I got cool stuff going on.
Oh
Can't
yeah.
talk about it yet, but
Oh, I'm
there's more
sure.
stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. All right. Thank you.